a difficult one. So I hope that we're able to discuss this and not get too upset emotionally or otherwise, because, you know, it really is a huge story for Russia, and one that I think that as Russians talking with international people or foreign people, I think it's important to be able to discuss this, because it is such a reflection of society and of government and of so much. So let's talk a bit about this. Let's ask the first question. What do people that you know say about what happened in Kemerovo, if anything? Elia, let's start with you, because you're outside of the capital. You're in, you know, a smaller city. What are people saying there in Samara, if anything?
You know, people try not to discuss this topic. I don't know why, but still maybe because it is painful, and we know that a lot of dangerous things are happening around us, and we don't pay enough attention for that. So that's why people are avoiding discussing that. But still, there were some meetings and organized. I don't know how is it in English. Oh, so in every community or in every team in different organizations, there was almost official discussing. I don't know about every organization, but I'm working at school, and there was official meeting about this situation. And nowadays we should be more careful with that rules of evacuation. We should train with the students, and I think it is very good point, because sometimes we think that it's not necessary, but actually it is useful. But I don't know. I know that lots of commercial organizations do that from time to time. So, and I asked other colleagues, they have very good um, time of evacuation for the whole building, about 2 5 minutes. So they can manage to evacuate themselves in 2 5 minutes, and that's, I think, very good. And to reach this aim, I think we should train. But in all other points, according, because there are many dangerous things around us now. The snow is melting, and we've got a lot of dangerous situations connecting with that, and I don't think that we pay enough attention for that. So so the situation is so in Samara.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that honest answer. I think you bring up a lot of good points, and the fact that people there aren't talking about it directly, but at the same time, you mentioned how they're going over these evacuation plans and everything else. There is this indirect discussion, right? So the tragedy has led to discussion of maybe improving or at least understanding what to do in a situation like that. So I think that that's very characteristic of a lot of Russia, right? You don't want to address the elephant in the room. You know, I mean, that's that sort of saying. And you're in a smaller town, maybe you have people that just don't want to make a hassle, right? People want to stay out of the, want to prevent making more work for themselves, for others. You know, I think that's part of, at least when I was living in Russia, I noticed a lot of, there are a lot of times when there are quite obvious safety or dangerous, you know, situations around, and people never wanted to say anything because they didn't want, you know, they didn't want to make a deal about it. And I think that it's something that maybe is gradually changing, maybe in bigger cities, for example, like Moscow. I remember, you know, you mentioned winter. I remember a couple of years ago in St. Petersburg, that whole tragedy when there were all of those melting icicles, you know, and all those people were dying were getting hurt because they were hit by this, you know, big chunk of ice that was falling from the sky. And again, like how many tragedies have to happen? How many people have to really, I don't know, protest or make a big fuss about it for something to be done? So I don't know. I mean, let's ask you, Denise, what about Moscow? I mean, are people in Moscow saying things, people or what's the situation there about what happened in Kemerovo? Are people talking about it?
We not discuss tragedy in Kemerovo a lot, but in engineering society, discussion about situation with safety system, with infrastructure system are very often, because most of infrastructure system is also important for security. For example, for firefighters, it's very important good quality of water supply systems. And such report situation is not very good, because part of system was not upgraded after USSR time. Most of system in modern houses are not good maintained or good developed at the beginning. So generally situation is not very good. Another side that traditionally all security systems have a big reserve, that big technical reserve, and most part of system are duplicated. So it's a very discussable question. In Kemerovo situation, most important thing was that it was not a building developed for trading, for entertainment center. It was a ex-factory building with rather small doors, with not well-planned evacuation ways.
Right. No, I mean, those are very good points to mention. Wait, what happened here? We got a message. No, I'll be there in 2 minutes. Okay, it's fine. I don't know. I saw there from Elias a message and just realized it now. But no, that's a very good point you make. And again, yeah, what exactly is there a safety? I mean, these are things that I guess we're seeing people talk about. It's good that people are talking about them. I mean, I remember in Moscow, those markets, or was it in Moscow where there was that market collapse? Remind me, guys, is that where that happened? You remember that? Maybe not.
I don't remember what was there.
I don't know. Anyway, because you see a lot of those too. That's all over Russia. That's in the big cities. That's in the smaller cities, small towns. Those very old buildings where you have markets, where you can buy meat and cheese and food and that sort of stuff. And those are really old structures. And I wonder, with all the snow and all the years that these things have been in use, how safe are they too? I mean, those are things to really think about. Where I am, okay, there's really not been any discussion about this tragedy. In the US, I mean, it was on the news. Thankfully, they have managed to not politicize it too much, because I think you can understand how this can be a very political topic, depending on how you want to blame the government for this, if you choose to do that. And that's, of course, an opportunity for a lot of political discussion that maybe isn't the right place. So I can say, thankfully, I haven't seen a lot of this being played around with in the US, at least. Thankfully, they haven't politicized that. But no, I mean, let's maybe go on to the next question. What about safety? How do you feel about the safety of where you live and work? Denise, what about you? How do you feel about safety?
In common, I feel safety because usually I'll check possible problem in building or in visible part of security system myself. It's a kind of, also such kind of professional deformation, because I looking on many things from engineering viewpoint. How it was developed, what is the goal of current systems or current structures, like that. So when we relocate to a new office, remember we check is our passes work for additional stairs and for location on a roof. So it was really working. So in most cases, it is hard to feel completely safe, but it is possible to check most important thing and feel rather safe.
Elia, what about you? What do you think? Do you feel safe where you're living, working? You mentioned that evacuation plan.
No, I don't feel safe, and now I just understood it right now, because I also before I haven't paid attention enough for that. Maybe I even didn't think about it. I don't know why, but still, I think it's also maybe a Russian feature. But nowadays, I try to understand that small things, pay attention to that and be more attentive, um, because because these things, they are really important, and sometimes they can be crucially important. But but I think that mostly, of course, some authorities should think about it and be responsibility for that. But it is so organized in Russia, but that everyone should think about him, herself, themselves first, because if you will think, okay, I don't want to think about it because I'm not professional in that, and if you will rely on some authorities, mostly you will fail, I think, because there was a situation about 2 3, I don't know, 5 days ago, that very ice fell down from the roof and took, so it was a big amount of ice, and with not only ice, it was with tube. I don't know how is it called in Russian, so that in English, that tube that helps to run away the rain. How is it called?
Oh, you mean like a rain gutter, or that rain, rain gutters.
Rain garden. So the with the part of that rain garden. Yes, am I right in my
Gutter.
pronoun?
Hang on a second. Hang on. Gutter. Rain. I'm gonna type it in. Rain.
Okay, so with that stuff, it fell down with that stuff, and it happened. Fortunately, no one was there, because it was happened near the acre. I don't know how. So that space between two buildings. Acre.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The space between
Yes,
two buildings.
and the
Okay.
people are always working through that, and the cars are moving, and sometimes even some cars are were parking nearby. So it was very fortunately that there was no one around, because very often there also children, mothers with children go there because dancing club is nearby. So I was so shocked. I called to the authority who is responsibility for that. They say, "Oh, okay, no one was. I don't know how is it. No one was hurt, so that's good. Okay, we will remove it." And they removed that stuff only after 5 days. So, and nothing was done. So after a week, they started to clean all that roofs. Well, of course, there was no acts, no punishment, nothing. I can't imagine that situation in Germany. I thought that, for example, if it would be possible there, uh, I'm absolutely sure that there will be some punishments for such a situation.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I mean, it's a huge safety issue. And again, one of those things, okay, it's not my job. I've got to be approved, got to be authorized. You have to have, some sort of paper that's signed and stamped and then approved. And then, yeah, I mean, those are things that are definitely inhibiting, I think, safety when it comes to that sort of thing. I don't know. I mean, do I feel safe where I live? I kind of have always been aware, have always known to be aware of where I am, know how to get out in an emergency. I mean, when we were in school, we would learn how to do that sort of thing. Although I think that maybe, at least in American society, people are maybe too confident that things are safe. People don't worry about anything. And it's not a matter of because they think that someone else is going to take care of it for them. They just think that it just cannot be because it cannot be. And there's a lot of different reasons for that in the US. Part of it is the litigation culture where, people get hurt, they sue, and, there's like money involved. So people are very, they kind of assume that, oh, it couldn't possibly be a problem because no one wants to lose money. No one, if someone gets hurt. So I think that I noticed that a lot. And I remember I overheard a conversation about how someone was looking for a new kindergarten for their child because the kindergarten where the child was going, it was some private kindergarten, and it was closed after a fire inspection. And the mother was very upset that she had to go find a new kindergarten and just like, oh, it's so much more work for me now and everything. And yet in my head, the only thing that was really registering was like, my gosh, lady, aren't you thankful that, there were inspectors that came and they saw that this was a danger that could have potentially really, like harmed your child? Instead, no, it's just like, oh, it's an inconvenience for me because there are these inspections and everything like that. So I thought that was a really kind of eye-opening experience as to how maybe people, at least in the US, are just so immune to how important these sort of things are, which, to me, was quite shocking, just having lived in different places where, they aren't so strict with these inspections. Safety-wise, I know that when I was in Croatia, there was, again, talking about a kindergarten, there was a kindergarten that was very close to where we lived. And there was a time when all the children were out playing, and I didn't see any teachers or, any adults anywhere near, but there were these children that were hanging off the bars, the bars of this fence. And this kindergarten was quite high up because it's a very hilly town and everything. And I'm thinking, my gosh, these children were taking stuff and throwing stuff onto cars that were parked below. And I thought, my goodness, this is so dangerous. I mean, this is so dangerous. These children are throwing things and they could easily fall over these fences because they're climbing on the gate. And I actually immediately called not that kindergarten itself, but the state organization that is in charge of those things. And I said, hi, listen, I'm sorry to bother you, but I saw something that's very not safe and just need to let you know. And the woman said, oh, which one is it? And I told her, and can you believe it? I mean, I was not expecting this at all. The very next day, there were workers there that were installing higher fences around this kindergarten. And I thought, wow, I didn't expect that in a million years for something, one, to be done, and two, to be done so quickly. Which, okay, is good. But then at the same time, I'm wondering, how come no one saw this before? How come I had to call and say something about it? So again, I've never been inside of that particular place. I wouldn't want to, just from the way it looks on the outside. I don't think it's particularly fire safe. It's part of the reason why my child won't step foot inside of it. But again, I don't think we should ever assume that the people responsible for these things are doing 100% perfect job. You always have to be looking. You always have to be ready to maybe make a comment, and not necessarily to the person that you think would care. So not necessarily to a person that's working in that place, but maybe to a higher authority, and not doing it in a way that says, hey, you must do something, but say, hey, I saw this, maybe you want to look in. Again, there's no guarantee that someone is going to do it, but I don't know. I think that we need to be aware of these sort of things. And that's just something that I am aware of more and more as I get older, and just look and see how things maybe aren't as perfect as they should be. And there are risks just about everywhere. What about the next question? I mean, what do you think happened at that Kemerovo shopping center? Denise, what do you think happened? I mean, there is news that comes around. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of talk, a lot of those meetings. What do you think happened personally? What do you think?
As I remember, in latest news, there was rather full description of what's happened, except of right cause, because as I understand, it's not yet known for anybody. So 5 years now, there kinder play garden. I don't know how to describe it correctly, and on the higher floor, and there was no any reaction first time, because sprinkler is a water supply system which can automatically spread water over the flammable area and slightly decrease speed of fire, was completely disabled after rebuilding of shopping center, and the signalization system was already disabled due to false positive signals a long time ago. So no system will detect any fire, and there was only people reaction, and information about fire was slowly spread from people. Next, after top floors was full of smoke, some according information, after 4 minutes after fire starts from security cameras, all doors in cinema was open because people go through doors, but probably somewhere, looks like somewhere close, one of the cinema room, I don't know how to explain more correct.
Cinema hall or movie
Cinema
theater.
Hall. Cinema hall, and close and block the door, trying to prevent smoke pass to people who was in this place, and to them wait to hope to firefighters arrive first and save all. So there was most possible cause why the door was really locked. And then without any smoke removing system, because in all places where many people, there was a very important addition to ventilation system, it's a smoke removal system. It's a big open pipes which are closed usually by special frames, which automatically open and work like a big tube to extract all smoke from rooms and pass throughout up, which also helps people to evacuate and provide additional time. This was also totally disabled as usual, and smoke fill most part of center, which also prevent evacuation.
It's just unbelievable, like all these things you hear and the facts that we've gotten. I mean, you hear them and you just think, how is that all possible? I mean,
for me it was not. For me, it was most shocked what happens with people, but not what happens with technical systems. Because few times in more than 10 years before, I usually meet different reports about completely disabled any fire signalization, smoke signalization system, about disabled smoke removal system. Problem that all the system should work one way. It should work automatically and even in situation where is full power loss. So if a system not maintained or built was, sometimes it affects accidentally without any fire. And it caused some spending of money to re-enable them, to check it in fire inspection and so on. And of course, most people want to spend any money and simple block them to keep from false working. It was well known for many years. And I sometimes meet blocked smoke removal smoke removal, it's not membrane, ventilation door. Blocked with nail or with some lock. So it prevents automatically working in case of fire.
Yeah. I mean, Denise, you're in Moscow. Do you think that sort of thing could happen in Moscow too? Or do you think that this is maybe a regional thing?
It happens everywhere. In Moscow, we have many abroad franchise, like in Ocean, IKEA, usually used not local but abroad instructions and broad security checklists. So for some organization, it's not problem. But in Moscow, I also meet a small shopping center without any good maintained security system.
Elia, what about you? I mean, do you think that these sort of things could happen where you are? I mean, is that the same sort of security or lack of security? I mean, do you think that these things are tested? It's such a difficult question. I mean, and I don't know. I don't want people to be worried, but then at the same time, I think we need to all be thinking about safety and this sort of thing.
Yes, and I don't feel safety at all because all that I agree absolutely with Denise. And as far as I'm not uh, so educated in this in this part, so because I don't know why, but to tell you the truth, really, I'm being the mother of three children. I never thought about such things before, about that fire. I never even thought, I have never thought that it could be possible. And nowadays, I really have this sense of fear while getting some invitations for birthday parties, and usually it is common situation when we make birthday parties for our kids in such centers. And nowadays, I really feel fear, and I really now will choose that very center to go or not to go, to look at internet to find some information. Is that new, old, but still it is so not professional knowledge, because it is, I don't know whether it is open or not. I think it is mostly, it is closed information. We can't be sure about the things. Maybe we can just visually understand whether it is working not, because after that situation they were school vacation, and I promised to take my son to the space exhibition. And really, I didn't want to go, but I thought that the exhibition was only on the second floor, and there was big shop and video. They are selling techniques and refrigerators and things like that. And I thought that if there is next to this exhibition such a big shop, and they should somehow take that big things, so they should have some big doors somewhere nearby. And that was the main reason why I decided to go to that exhibition. Now I think about that, and I really shocked, because before that strategy, I would never even think about it. What floor is it? How many doors are there to evacuate? So I don't know. I really shocked, and nowadays um I think about these important things much more careful, and I don't believe in authorities at all, because the whole system uh, is, I don't know, it is not it is not working, because the salaries are too low, and that provides that system of, how is it called? Взятки. I forgot the word in English.
Bribes,
Yes,
bribes.
yes. So that's I didn't think I think it would take much time to change the situation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I, I have kind of maybe a problem, but I don't always, I'm always kind of concerned about these sort of things, about safety. And I think that something can happen anywhere. Panic can happen anywhere. Um, I think we take for granted going into large shopping centers and things like that. Um, all of these things, I don't go to them a lot. And part of it is just because having a small child, to me, it's a real hassle. And forget about in the event of an emergency, just in the event of, I don't know, having to get out of the shopping center quickly because we're tired, or we need to go to the toilet or something like that. There's always something. And honestly, the time it takes to get up and down, I'm trying to think too, like where there are stairs in some of these shopping centers that I've gone. And to tell you the truth, I know where there are in, I can't even tell you. And that I didn't even realize that before. And here I am thinking I always know the way out and everything else. But then I'm thinking I always know the way out with the lift, the elevator, or with the escalator. And in the event of an emergency, is that going to be safe to use? Probably not. Where are the emergency exits? And these are things that I'm trying to think about, and I can't give you the answer to that. And that kind of worries me, to tell you the truth. I don't know. I mean, even in the building where I was living, this big apartment building, similar to what you'll find, well, not even maybe in Moscow, these really big high rises. I mean, there were 20 plus floors in this building where we lived. And I was just running down one day we had just come back from a ski trip, and I was just going down to the car real quick to get the rest of our stuff. And I didn't take my phone. I just ran down. I was still wearing my ski clothes and everything else. And I got stuck in the elevator. And I immediately panicked because there was a big creaking sound and I didn't know what happened. And, it was quite a scary experience. And the door wouldn't open. I had no idea where I was. And I didn't have a phone to call. And of course, in elevators, there's supposed to be buttons to press, in the event of an emergency. And so I go and I press it and nothing happens. And instead I see, and I've never even realized this before, but next to that emergency call button, it just says, in the event of an emergency, call this number. Well, remember, I didn't have my phone. And I mean, I was just in such a state of panic, and I was banging and screaming. And luckily, I was in between floors, and someone heard me and was able to open the door. But if I hadn't screamed and made a panic, no one would even have known that I was inside, And I think too, like, oh my goodness, what if there was some sort of emergency? What if there was a fire or an earthquake or something that required evacuation from that building? I mean, everyone would potentially get out, but no one would even think to check a stuck elevator. And I mean, like, these are things that are shocking. And you wonder, I mean, everything can happen unexpectedly. That was something that I learned, and this was not very long ago. But again, you know, how are you supposed to be safe? What can you do? Something can happen anywhere, and something totally unexpected can happen. So again, it's just a matter of being quick and trying to get things solved as quickly as possible without a panic. But what happened in that shopping center, just unbelievable, with, you know, those systems that weren't working, the fire alarm not going off, doors being closed. I mean, just so many things that just, I think we have to keep on asking the questions and, you know, hope that nothing like that ever happens again, that we're able to learn from that and be smart and just really be on top of these situations as they're happening, and, you know, just so they never happen again. Next question. Who do you think is responsible for this tragedy? Elid, do you think there is a responsibility? Is there someone who's responsible for it?
As far as we've got government and the structures, and we live in we believe that we live in a civilized world. So of course there are lots of people with that instructions. They should be professional. Of course, there some people they're responsible, and they should do that. But unfortunately, they don't do that. So the responsibility, most of all, so we are ourselves responsible for everyone. And remembering that my story about that shocking ice falling from the roof. When I told that to my, I don't know, acquaintance, to colleagues, they were said, of course, you should be more attentive while working near the buildings. So first of all, what Russian people think, the first thing, that you should be responsible for everything you should do. So the responsibility is it is our business, first of all. And I think, yes, mostly it is so. But I'm not sure that it should be so, because we can't be professional in everything. And I think it would be much better when some professional people will check and work on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point there, that whole sort of burden of personal responsibility. I think that a lot of that is this sort of post-socialist mentality, right? Where the understanding, you know, that the government, the state, is supposed to provide everything for everyone, and it's the state's responsibility. But if and when things work right, that's great. But if there's a shortcoming, we're supposed to keep our mouths shut, and it's really up to us, right? But only in that case, right? That personal responsibility when it comes to, I don't know, maybe bettering an economic condition or business or something like that. No, that's not okay. But then what is if something isn't already in existence. And I think that's a huge problem, not only for Russia, but there are a lot of other countries that are in the same sort of situation. A lot of these really post-socialist states, right, where the state used to provide all of these guarantees, but if they didn't, then people were just supposed to keep quiet about it and assume the responsibility for themselves. I mean, I remember, and this is in Croatia, which is also, you know, also a former communist country. And they had this similar sort of thing where, you know, okay, we follow the rules of this, but then if something goes wrong, oh, it's who should pay more attention. And it was at a shopping center, and it was actually at a European chain franchise, like you were talking about, Denise, that you assume that, you know, if you're going into a Auchan or IKEA or something like that, that there's a better system working because it's this foreign brand with different standards. Well, I kind of assumed this was an Austrian brand that we had gone into. same thing, you know, I'm just at the supermarket, and can you imagine my shock when my child, I think it was like 2 at the time, you know, asked, "Oh, look, Mom, there's cheese." And I say, "Oh, yeah, it's cheese." And it's like, "Can I get that cheese?" And I said, "Sure." And so he reached into the shelf where the cheese was being held, only the shelf wasn't secured. It was this glass shelf that ended up falling on top of him, on his head. And I mean, it's a miracle that he was okay. I mean, he cried and everything else, but I was just completely shocked by this. Like, how is it possible in a supermarket for something to fall on a customer, you know? And it was, okay, a child's head, but it could have easily been an adult's leg or knee or something like that. I mean, it was a clear danger. And I went and I asked to talk to the manager immediately. And the manager goes, "Oh, well, that's the way it always is. You just need to pay more attention." And I'm going and I'm saying, wait a minute, that's not how it always is. I've been to several other stores of this same brand, including other stores, and that shelf is always supposed to be secured with screws. And for whatever reason, at this particular store, it wasn't. And again, it was just the mentality of, oh, it's your fault. I mean, that's something that it's not the right answer, you know? And I think that people, consumers, customers, patrons, we need to be more demanding of that sort of thing. It's not just up to us. I mean, there is that level of personal responsibility, but we also have to, I mean, not just be comfortable and think that everything is safe, but at the same time, there are things, these unexpected things that really maybe shouldn't be all that unexpected. But again, unless you say something about it, is anyone going to change it? No. If you say something about it, is someone going to change it? There's no guarantee, but at least there's a chance that way. Denise, what about you? I mean, do you think that there is someone who is responsible in particular for this tragedy that happened in Kemerovo? Denise,
yes, I was on mute. It's a very wide question because there was many different levels of security checks, of responsible bureaucracy systems or something else who should provide security for people for such cases. And really, there was hundreds and hundreds of people who have a part of responsive on that case. That is impossible to open a new shopping center without approving of tens different bureaucracy men. I don't know how to call correctly. Civil servant or clerks, bureaucracy clerks. Also,
bureaucracy.
There are also a few different control commissions about fire security, about terrorist security, something other thing. There are also architectural control, and theoretically, it's impossible to start using such kind of buildings. But in our reality, it is possible. There are dozens of such shopping centers rebuilt from old factories building. It's completely insecure and unsafe. And also, all of these clerks have some top-level control. And at the edge is the government and president. And it's impossible to create such kind of lack of responsible line from up to down. Whereas theoretically, is no one responsible. Oh, it was nobody checked this building, nobody allowed to start using it, nobody know, and nobody officially is responsible. But really, it's a whole system of rejecting responsibility. And all part of this system are responsible for people who dies.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's such a, again, it's such a big question. It's such a question that I think should make us ask more questions. And I understand how the Russian people are looking and saying, how is this possible? And they're looking at the authorities and, these inspections and how they're not efficient and how they're not working if things like this are happening. Of course, Putin is mentioned, how is this possible? Because, again, I think it's because people maybe expect, and I don't want to blame you. I don't want to, try to teach you how to live or anything like that. But I think that, and a lot of times people are expecting too much from people who are too far detached from what you're actually living. Does that make sense, you guys? Because I think that, and it's what you've been, it's what the society has taught you to understand that you need to expect, but then whether the shortcomings, it's just like there's no real accountability. And that's something, and there can't be accountability because the assumed accountability is from such a big source, such a high up source, and it's just not efficient totally. So if there is like a fire at a shopping center or a fire in an apartment building or something like that, to put the blame on the president is for that particular thing. No, it's not the right. I don't think it's the right approach. However, when something like that happens, the authorities, including the president, I mean, that whole vertical that you have needs to respond. And I think that is a legitimate concern, a legitimate demand from society. When something like that happens, there needs to be a reaction. There need to be different measures that are taken so that it doesn't happen again. That's what the responsibility lies. Responsibility and accountability. And I think that that's something that people really need to continue to put pressure on. And that needs to start locally. It needs to start at the source. I mean, you need to maybe demand that there are, like Ellie, you're talking about the school, the inspections in the school and stuff like that. Or when it comes to choosing where you're going to have your child's birthday party, know all of those things, demand to know those things, because as a person, as a human being, you have the right to know that you're safe in a place that you choose to be, in a place where you choose to send your children, where you choose to spend your money. I mean, I think those are things that we really need to understand and, be concerned about. And definitely the government needs to respond. The government needs to listen to people. I mean, that's why the government exists, to serve people, to keep them safe, to keep them happy. And safety is such an important part of being happy. And I think it's such a big question. And like I say, it makes us ask so many more questions. And I really, truly hope that things are going to get better and things are going to change. In the time that I spent in Russia, especially in Moscow, I did see a lot of improvement in that sort of thing. And I think that the reason why, and I'm going to be really honest, is that there were people in Moscow that maybe had the time, the education, the concern to say things about these problems and to maybe demand. And because, again, this is maybe a luxury of a city like Moscow, because there's so much variety, there's so much choice, that people and businesses realize too that, hey, if something that I'm providing isn't up to par, people are going to choose to go to another place. And if you get to smaller cities and towns, I understand completely that you don't have that choice. I mean, I've spent a lot of time not only in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but in smaller towns too. And I know that there isn't another choice. I know that if you want to go to the cinema, there's one cinema or, just maybe two to go to. And you really don't have that same sort of, again, choice. And then at the same time, the owners of those places don't have the same responsibility to give to customers. And again, that's something that I don't know how you solve, but I think that people everywhere just really have to be on top of it and say, hey, we're people, hey, we matter. And I think that what you see in those protests that we have seen in Russia is the attempt of people to finally do that. And I'm not advocating, all of this stuff, or, I'm just saying that I think that it's a very telling sign that people do care. And I think that for a lot of time there was the understanding, and this is, I don't know, guys, I don't want to criticize or anything like that. I'm just observing because I lived in Russia and I love Russia so much. But what I saw from so many people was that oh, oh, what to do mentality, right? Oh, it's just the way it is. But it doesn't have to be that way. You guys are intelligent, wonderful people, and you deserve so much more. Your lives matter. Your children's lives matter. And I really hope so much that things will improve in that in that way, that safety, that security, that accountability, responsibility, that just quality of life that I think Western society often looks at Russia and sees that is lagging behind. Let's not say lacking, let's say is lagging behind because of corruption, because of bribes, because of the bureaucracy involved in so many things. So let's just hope, really, guys, and let's, teach our children to demand those sort of things too, because it's our lives at the end of the day. Anyway, I'm sorry, getting a bit emotional, just really kind of concerned about this, truly, not just in Russia, but everywhere, because I see it also slipping, even in a country like the United States, where for so long there's been that maybe just comfort that people automatically assume that everything is safe. So kind of similar to what you see there, but in a different way. And, tragedies can happen in an instant, unexpectedly. So that's the thing, just keeping on top, inspections and getting rid of the bribes and that sort of thing. That's just so important for all of us, not for businesses, but for people. How do you feel about the public discussion that's been going on this topic? I mean, maybe not personally, but just from this sort of maybe social media standpoint, those different protests that were had. How do you feel about that, Denise? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing?
I think that social discussion is a very good thing because it's allowed to show some existed problems to other people. Because traditionally many people wouldn't like to think about social problems, about organization problems at all. But on the other side, I can see many trying of manipulation in social opinions from side of official propaganda or inside from different peoples who trying to achieve more attention. So for me, it's a rather crazy mix result. But in common, I think it's very important to have any kind of social discussion about what happens and who is responsible and how to avoid such situation. There was a thing trying to stop any discussions. It's a must. It's a wisest way.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Edda, what about you? What do you think about this? I mean, what do you feel about the public discussion that's going on the topic or not going on the topic? Like you say, I mean, like you mentioned in Samara, that people aren't really talking about it. I mean, how do you feel about that public? Because, I mean, there is some going on. What are your feelings about it?
So no, in ordinary lives they're avoiding discussing that, but I see that in society community, I don't know how, social communities like Facebook, Instagram, VK, Vkontakte. So many people used that situation, yes, to, I don't know how to be, I don't know. So I think they maybe their true emotions, but I don't believe them too much because I think that they exaggerate the situation just, yes, to take attention to themselves. So they speculate on that problem, and I think it is really ugly. I can't understand how can someone speculate on it, but it is the same as in TV channels. They use that hot news to higher up their level. So I think the same situation was nowadays with that personal account. So they were talking about that, making photos and even videos and things like that, just to level up their, I don't know, their
Right,
popularity.
these clicks, views,
Yeah,
popularity, ratings,
yeah,
views. Yeah, I know, I know.
crazy. And nowadays, this situation showed that it is so, I don't know, cynic. Is it the same in English? So, so the society
Yeah, like
becomes
cynical. Yeah.
much more than so. It was mentioned even in Pushkin times, but today's it is impossibly high level. I think of that.
Yeah. No, these are very good points. Very good points, you guys. I mean, again, so many questions, but I think we need to discuss, and I think that it's something that as society, it's got to change just because those things are things that we've been talking, like you say, since Pushkin's time, right? Those those shortcomings, and then you wonder, how is that possible? Really? I mean, people are too smart, and yet, yeah, I don't know. It's amazing, and again, it's one of those things that makes me so upset, really, so sad. It's such a tragedy, and I don't know, you guys. My condolences, really, because it is such a tragedy for all Russian people, and I think for all people, because it's something so simple. So, a trip to the shopping center on a Sunday. You think it's such an innocent thing, such a safe thing, and look at what happens. It's a unbelievable time we live in, but you think I can only hope that we can really get on top of this and make our lives safer, make our children's lives safer, and everything else. But thank you so much for discussing this. I hope that we can continue to discuss things like this because they're important. They really are. And I hope that you're able to discuss these with people you care about too, because we shouldn't just keep quiet about things that could potentially affect us too. It really is important to talk about these things and not just have them go away. In the US, there's the same thing with these tragedies, with these shootings in schools and in places too. And people talk. It doesn't solve the problem, but I think that we are supposed to talk about them because we don't want them to happen all the time. They're tragedies. They're horrible tragedies. And finding the solution is something that's not totally easy, but it's something that we need to at least try to do together. So, anyway, guys, any ideas for time? Guys, you there?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am in. As usual,
Yeah.
I was on mute.
Yeah, it happens, I know.
Uh, I try to surf over a list of discussion topics, so I find a few ideas. For example, we can discuss procrastination.
Procrastination. Okay.
Yes,
Don't
for
put
me,
off tomorrow what you can do today, right?
yes, because for me it's rather important, especially in case when I try to start some silly or monotonous work.
Yeah. That's I like that. I like procrastinate. I like to procrastinate. No, I don't like to, but I do. I can tell you that. That's true. That's true. Elliot, what do you think about procrastination?
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah?
I support.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a great idea. All right, let's do that. And I'm going to try to get that to you as soon as possible, guys, without procrastination. But it's a good thing to think about. Let's do that. Let's do that. All right. So next Wednesday, same time, same place. Well, different hangout, but same time.
Yes, yes, the
Yes.
same time. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank
And be
you.
safe and be aware and take care. Take care of everyone.
Yes.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.